John, first of all, have you and the lads got over that disappointing result before the international break? A week and a half to reflect on that now.
Yeah, I don't think we fully get over it until we probably set foot on the pitch at Carrow Road on Friday. We don't, we do want to feel the pain of it, and we want to try and learn as much as we can. But we had the debrief when we were back in the building, and we spent a couple of days over what we need to do differently, what went wrong, and after that, it's been about putting that to bed. It's been about making sure that we get on with a really positive couple of weeks worth of training, and trying to attack these 2 Easter games.
So you're now a little bit short on wingers in training. Star Caviar on the other side of the world with Paraguay, and now Miliali going off for Ireland. What are your thoughts on Miliali getting that call up?
Really pleased for Millie. I think the obviously disappointment in the Ireland camp with the loss, but I think that in terms of Millie getting the call up, I think because of Smodic and that serious injury that we saw the other night, really pleased for Millie. I know a couple of people inside the Ireland camp, and I think for him to have that boost, we would have loved him to be here training, but I think the fact that he's got that international call up is a really proud moment for him. So really pleased for him and wishing the best of luck tonight, and hopefully he gets on.
See the big talking point. Ibu Adams withdrawn from the Gambia squad. What's the update with Ibu?
Ibu just tweaked his MCL slightly, so he'll miss the next couple of games at least. Most likely, we'll probably see him back in time for the Leicester game.
And Andre De Sale, is he in contention for the weekend?
Andre won't be in contention for the weekend. I think that if we're looking at anything, it will be for the Monday game against Oxford, but he won't be ready to start.
And Thomas Waddingham, how's he doing?
Wads will be back from Middlesbrough. What
are your thoughts on the Michael O'Neill saga that's come out today?
Look, I think that it's a situation that isn't anything that I can answer. I don't know what Michael O'Neill's intentions are. I'm certainly not going to question his integrity. I can try and delve into his mind and guess what he's going to do, but I think this is probably an unfair thing to ask of me. My overall feeling on the situation is the very fact you're asking the question means that there's an issue, and I don't think it's a Michael O'Neill issue. He's obviously well within his rights to do whatever he wants. I think it's definitely an issue in terms of conflict of interest and the position the league's allowed us to be put in.
See, Terry Devlin got a good chunk of minutes as well. Unfortunate not to get another chance to get to the World Cup. How pleased are you for Terry?
Yeah, I think Terry's taken himself from a player who was involved in the under-21 setup when we first got him to someone who's now starting in what's the biggest game for Northern Ireland in a number of years, and unfortunately they didn't quite get there. It was always going to be a really big ask away at Italy, and acquitted themselves brilliantly well, Terry included. And I think if you especially when you sort of consider where Terry's come from and what he's turned himself into, to have that starting spot in such a big game was a brilliant moment for him.
Looking ahead to Good Friday then, Philip Clement's Norwich City, what are you expecting from them? They've obviously turned a massive corner since he's come in.
Yeah, it's no surprise to me because obviously the calibre of manager, but also the fact that I think they do have one of the best squads in the Championship. Some of the players and some of the strength and depth that they've got, and they're really showing that. Strengthened again in January, picked up some magnificent players, and they've been very, very strong. If you look at the likes of Paris Magoma coming in, Toure, just to name two that have come in January, very, very strong additions. And they've picked up a lot recently. Their home form has been very, very good. So as always, it's going to be a tough test going to Carrow Road, particularly when they're in such good form.
They're also nursing a lot of injuries like Portsmouth, but they're still finding a way to get through a tough period, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't think there's nursing as many injuries as us. So, not that I'm not going to cry that one in, but they've got an extremely strong squad.
Just how big are these two games, away at Norwich and at home to Oxford on Easter Monday? How big are they for the football club going forward?
Every single game is absolutely massive for us, and starts on Friday. We're not getting too carried away with ourselves in terms of what we're looking at for Monday. We're just fully focused on Friday. That's the most important game for us at the moment.
Just finally, with this tough period coming up, what's your message to the Portsmouth supporters?
I think that there's obviously a fair bit of angst. There's worry about the situation at the football club. Understand that. I think that there was a reaction during and after the QPR game, which is fine. I spoke about after the game. I can live with it. I'll take my medicine. You've got to take the rough with the smooth. I think that ultimately my message is, there are going to be fans that are going to pay a lot of money to travel over the Easter weekend to come and watch us, and I know we're going to get a huge amount of support. And I think ultimately, I think at this stage of the season and where we are as a football club, the level of that support is probably going to be a reflection of what we produce on the pitch. So all we can actually do is try and produce and make sure we focus on ourselves. And we always know that if we show, I think the bare minimum, and if we show sort of fight, hunger and desire, then we'll get a huge amount of support back. And by the time we roll onto the game on Monday, it's regardless of the result Friday, it's going to be an absolutely huge game for us.
Cheers, John. Good luck on Fridays.
I've written an article today about why there's 8 games left. There's still hope for Pompey. Definitely hope, isn't there? What gives you hope that Pompey can stay in the Championship?
Well, I think that yes, it's an interesting one because we've had really poor results in the last 6 games. It feels like it does feel like there's a lot of desperation and despair. Ultimately, we're a point above the relegation zone with a game in hand, having not won in 6, and we've taken a point from those 6 games. So, right, there are tough games coming up. Every single game's a tough game. We've got to get that one straight. We know that because we've played games at home, the winnable games. We've lost them. We've gone away to some of the best sides in the league, and we've won. We've competed. We've played very well. So I don't think that makes a difference. I've seen this side consistently over the past 3 months perform very well at the level. I think we dipped in terms of our performance level significantly at QPR. Prior to that, I think we've been very, very unlucky in certain games. I know there's obviously the fact that results haven't been great, and I'm never going to hide behind that. But I stick by my assertion that post Bristol City, our performance levels have been very good, and those the players that we have in the building have produced for us. They've produced for us over the past few weeks. They've produced for us over the past few months, and it's just a case of us trying to sort of refine some of that form and put some of the sort of the demons of QPR to bed, and make sure that we produce performances over the next 8 games that keep us in the league.
1 point, game in hand above the relegation zone. It's still in your hands, isn't it?
Yeah. Simple as that.
It's what you can control, I suppose, isn't it? Is that the way you look at it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the situation is exactly that. We have to be positive about the situation, but realistic that sides down at the bottom are going to win games. We've seen that over the past few weeks. There are going to be some sides mid-table that probably lose the impetus towards the back end of the season because they're not fighting for anything. And my experience of football over the past 20 years of being in the game is that at this stage of the season, it coughs up some really, really strange results, particularly with sides down the bottom winning games. And we've got to be one of those. We've got to pick up results. We've got to probably pick up back-to-back results, and we've got to get enough points to see us safe. And yeah, we've got 8 games to go. There's plenty of points to play for, and we have to try and pick up as many as possible.
Realistically, 3 wins from those 8 games you need?
Maybe. Don't know. Probably depends where those wins come. And we've been playing sides that are in and around us, so I think that's always a factor. And I think the targets that we have set ourselves are solely to go to Norwich and try and put in as good a performance as possible and hopefully win the game.
We last spoke to you after QPR when obviously you and the players were shell-shocked over what you saw. How have you handled the aftermath of that? How have you addressed the players since coming back to training?
I think we've just been very honest about what went wrong in the game and what we can improve. And it's like most things. Whenever you have a decent win, you watch a game back, it's probably not quite as good as you thought it was. And very, very similar in terms of the QPR game. We watched the game back, and I was sat there at 3-0 thinking, this is in the first half thinking we're way off everything. We're 3-0 down. We can't get in near anything. It wasn't quite like that. They had 3 breaks and they were completely clinical in those 3, and they put the ball in the back of the net. And I think there was a stat that flicked up when we were 4-1 down. They'd had 5 shots, 4 of them had flown in, and they were extremely clinical. Now, there's context to the game as well, because QPR will argue, well, we did whatever we had to do. We didn't have to attack. We didn't need the ball. We didn't need touches in the box. We didn't need shots. Absolutely fine. But I've sat in here as the Portsmouth manager off the back of games where, and I think I spoke about this after the game, we've lost by the same scoreline, or we've lost 2-0, or we've lost whatever it is, and we've never been in the game. and we've never created anything. We've not had the ball. We've not looked like we can string two passes together. That wasn't the case against QPR. We bizarrely looked like an attacking threat, particularly at 3-1, where we could have got back into the game. And there was that key moment. I think we had a couple of chances, and then QPR broke. And again, they were very, very ruthless in terms of what they did to us on the day. But I didn't lose all hope off the back of that performance, because I thought we were just very, very naive in some of the things that we did, and we got punished for them. But we need to make sure that we use all of that, also harness the positivity that we have built up since the new year, and take that into Norwich.
Did you, when you address the players, is it important not to rip into them? How do you approach that side of it?
It depends. I think it depends. My reading of the situation changes from game to game. It depends on the context of the game. It depends what I've seen from the players. I think that there's quality issues, then there's effort issues, and there's everything in between. And I think that's a really important thing to gauge, whether I think that results have come off the back of poor decisions or poor quality versus actually not making the effort and not trying. And then there's also, what I think the reaction of the players is going to be as well. And there's never going to be one response to a result. There's never going to be one response to a performance. Some of the most intense I think I've been after games, and some of the most critical I've been after games is probably actually during the League One winning campaign, where I knew the expectations were high for us, and I held the players to certain standards that sometimes we dipped, and we could be winning it 2-0 at half time sometimes, and I'd let the lads know what I thought of the performances. It's very, very different. It's very, very different from game to game. It's very different across the board in terms of those seasons, and it is very important that we do keep spirits as high as possible, but whilst also being realistic about how the performances have gone.
Are you expecting to take on board what you've said post QPR?
Yeah, the lads have. I think the lads have taken on board everything. I look at the squad, and I don't think there's a lack of effort there. I think that there's a lot of boys that are operating at full capacity and are having very, very good seasons. And I think that there's obviously been some issues that we've had at times this season. I think the biggest the biggest I guess disappointment for me is that it felt like we had turned the corner, particularly post Charlton and post Millwall, and even after Wrexham. I thought it was one of those games we've gone away to a side that have got a huge amount of resource, and we've come very, very short, fallen very, very short on the night, and we did that. We just did it too often over the next few weeks. Not taking points against Hull, not taking points against Blackburn. Those results are really the ones that have cost us more than QPR, because you can take a day like that where everything goes wrong for us. We're really poor. Everything flies in the back of the net and move on. Unfortunately, we haven't given ourselves that luxury. So, look, there's always a combination in terms of what I think that we need to do better. And, we've taken a view on that this week going into the games at the weekend.
It's been a grueling schedule before the international break. You could see that with the players. Anyone could see that. How have you handled the players in the international break? How many days have you given them off? When did they train?
It's a little bit of a mix, really. We've scattered in some days off with training days. Whenever we've trained, we always like to train with intensity. We haven't had the whole group together because of the likes of looked like Ibu was going to go away, but he's obviously injured. We've lost Mackenzie Kirk, Gustavo, Millie, Seggs, Terry Devlin. So it's been a bit of a sort of a mixed group in terms of training, in terms of what we've been able to do. But when the lads have been on the grass, I think they've been exceptional. I think that the levels of commitment that I know we expect from professional footballers, but you don't always get, they've come back in, shown the willingness to take on board the lessons that we've spoken about and train really well. And yeah, we've mixed it in with a bit of rest.
Has it freshened them up?
I hope so. I don't think. Look, I think we've gone through a very grueling schedule with some good physical performances off the back of it. There were some games I thought maybe we'd come unstuck. I remember looking at that Wrexham game thinking that's a third away game on the spin. Are we going to come unstuck there because of the physical aspect? I don't think we did. Maybe we were short because we didn't necessarily have the luxury to change a Millie, for example, when we probably flogged him to death over a couple of games. But I thought that physically we ended those games pretty strongly. So I think we've looked pretty good physically. I didn't look at the QPR game and think we looked jaded or tired. We just weren't at it, and we couldn't get near them on the day. So yeah, it's been good to freshen things. I think more mentally than anything over the international break.
You mentioned soul searching after QPR as well. Have you soul searched within yourself as well?
Yeah, I think the biggest message for me or from me is that whenever we set a side out, whenever we put a side out, That's always obviously a reflection on myself and a reflection on what I've asked the boys to do. If I'm looking at a game and we're doing things, we're making poor decisions, then ultimately that's down to me. I'm the one that's going to get the plaudits. I'm the one that's going to get sacked. That's why head coaches, managers come and go. So I've got to take that on the chin. And whenever we get things wrong, whether I think that players have made mistakes or not, I think if players have made mistakes, it's down to me, right? I've picked the players, I've set them up, I've put them in that mindset, I've asked them to do certain things. So I'm always going to take that on board. I'm always going to take responsibility for that.
Do you believe you've made mistakes as well?
I make so many mistakes every single week and every single game. It's not just a cliche. I know every leadership book will tell you that the amount of mistakes I make every week is extremely high. Look, that's just the way it is. I'm not going to come off the back of a 6-1 defeat and say, "Oh no, I got everything spot on." But by the same token, I think we've got the same group and we set the lads up largely in the same way from game to game. So after you go and beat Millwall away, people will call you a tactical genius, and haven't you got the boys at it and you set them up really well. My approach to the games was obviously with the differences in, say, QPR and the differences in Millwall and a slight change in personnel for us. The approach that we took to the games was largely similar. I think the truth lies somewhere in between both of those. I don't think you all of a sudden become a horrendous head coach overnight because you lose a game, and you don't become a genius overnight because you win a game either. So it's just about trying to find those levels of consistency.
I suppose with 170 games as head coach, you are still learning all the time, aren't you?
Yeah, and I'm still extremely young in my sort of tenure as a coach. I know I've been here a long time now, but I obviously went straight from being a player to being a coach. I think that we went through a very, very quick evolution of having to adjust to life in the Championship last season. We probably would have wanted to do things slightly differently this year, and I certainly envisaged this year going slightly differently, but it hasn't. And yeah, we've had to adjust along the way. So I think the disappointment for me as a coach is I think that we had found a pretty successful formula in terms of playing style and been able to win games that was coming to fruition sort of towards the back end of February. But unfortunately, in the past 6 games, for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked.
Finally, Ibu, will he definitely play again this season, do you feel?
I think he will, yeah, I think he will. We're hopeful that he'll be back for that Middlesbrough game.
You say thinking hopeful, is it not certain he'll play again this season?
Sorry, by the way, I meant the Leicester game, not the Middlesbrough game. You just don't know. I've had so many this season where, we were talking in December about Murph being a couple of weeks away, and obviously that one hasn't worked out particularly well. There's been others where injuries have dragged on. Shocks last season dragged on, and the 2-week injury turned into a 6-month injury. So I'm hopeful, but I'm just not certain of anything until they're back out there on the grass actually playing a game.
How did he do it?
It was in a challenge late on in the game.
So him with the tears at the end of the game, that was about his injury rather than the situation and losing, and
probably a bit of both. I'm not sure. Yeah, I suspect it's a bit of both.
Did you fear he wouldn't play again this season at the time, and now it's not?
Yeah, when you saw a reaction like that, I thought there might be. I feared the worst there.
So there is a positive then to take that it's not as bad as potentially it could have been.
Yeah, definitely.
How is he at the moment?
Very, very bright and very enthusiastic, as you'd expect Ibu to be. So he is exactly as advertised.
Thank you.